We're living in the world that the incentive structure is totally distorted. In particular, in the last 20 years, where capitalism that was under check before the failure of communism, before the destruction of communism and the liberalization of financial markets went astray. And in that regard, also the legal profession and the economic profession were part of the abuse. Because I'll tell you just, I recommend to you, because I didn't give time to give you a lecture, because that's I'm doing later in New Jerusalem. But when I come, I discuss with Professor Amichai Cohen some of the issue of law and corruption. So I want to tell you two things. One about law and corruption, and the other about the tremendous danger of globalization, that if we don't put it under check, it will threaten essentially liberal democracy. But as a recommended reading, I have a good friend that is my age. I'm 63, so this is the age when you have some experience. His name is Moses Naim. Moses Naim, when he was 29, was the finance minister of Venezuela. Brilliant guy, and then he left. He became the editor of Foreign Policy, one of the magazines. And in 2005, he wrote a very important book. It's called Illicit, Lo Kasher, Lo Takin. It's about globalization and corruption. What Moses did, he took 20 research assistants and tells them one works on drugs, one on weapons, one on men, women, and children, one on body parts, patents, books, you know, all what you're talking about. And then he described how in the new world, all the new robber barons are buying the press, are buying politics. It was not a novel or going directly. What is the difference between the corruption that used to be always in civilization, given the weakness of human being, and what happened with globalization? The internet, the collapse of system, the opening of border, gave corruption such a magnitude that the nation state cannot anymore control it, and the power is enormous. And that threatens essentially all the institutions that we live in. And what gave me certain hope is the revolt that took place in many areas in the world, where young people and others say, it's not okay, let's try to do something about that. We don't know what to do, nobody knows. But we know that something is wrong in the world kingdom, in the general kingdom. Because I'll give you one lesson from my life, and then I have one comment on globalization inequality. You know, I joined when I was 41. I became president of Ben Gurion University, a small place that with a group of people that believe in collective work and not only individual success, create an empire. And the last thing I did, in September 1990, I organized a major conference in Budapest where the issue was to do a price reform in East Europe or institution reform. What to do first? Price reform, institution. I brought some of my colleagues, that was Joe Stiglitz, Kenneth Hero. I brought leaders from East Europe, the Soviet Union, and the few of us said, you cannot move from central planning economy to a market economy when you don't have no institutions, because economic is such a limited subject anyhow. It will be the greatest theft in history. But so many people wanted the grand theft. So outcome of that was that the wealth of Russia legally was distributed to few people. I'll give you, just since I say I'm in television here, so I'll give you a fable, and I won't use name. Let's say there is a guy called Moscovich. And Moscovich is a very good mathematics teacher. He earns a lot of money, 100 rubles a month. But then he became parliamentary assistant of somebody, let's call him Melchin. And Melchin, after a while, became the president of, let's call it, the United Ural States, okay? And this Melchin decided to privatize. This is the time. So he take Moscovich and make him the chairman, say, of the oil company. Now, the price of barrel of oil is $10 to a barrel inside United Ural States. Outside you pay a tax, it's 40. 40 minus 10, how much is it? 30. 30 you multiply by the number of barrels, and then Mr. Moscovich put his things, Mr. Melching his things, and then Melching get drunk, he's not well, he's thrown as president. He wants Moscovich to help him. He say, no, I'm going with Mr. Mutin. Melching is passed. Mr. Moscovich is buying a great football team in famous Great Britain called Melchi. He bought a great yacht and is one of the most beloved men in the world. He's a great businessman. That's a great of success. There is somebody else called Modorovsky. Modorovsky started the same, but he wanted liberal democracy, so they put him in jail. The most important corruption in the world is the legal corruption. Legal corruption in many places, including in my country, when people use the profession of law, and therefore I was so glad when my friend Danny Kaufman in the World Bank, when he designed the measure of corruption, in the beginning he started corruption is you do surveys how you bypass the law. It's not that. When you really use the law, and the question is the decline of morality. And here I come to the issue of law, economics, and globalization. Because we want to maintain our civilization that will have certain values. Values for respect to human being. Some of us follow Jesus. Some of that want to follow Rabbi Hillel, that to love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. Some of us want to follow Buddha. Some of us want to follow Khalil Gibran. But most of us follow the incentive structure that say, let's be more powerful, more greedy by superficial media, and rule the world. And this structure that when individually many lawyers and economists become very successful, and many of them abusing their profession. I never saw more abuse of economics as I see today by professors and correspondents. Economics is such a complicated subject. I brought Kenneth Arrow the Nobel Prize in Economics to Ben-Gurion 25 years ago. He's a close friend of mine, to give a lecture to all the faculty why economy should be humble. In a world of dynamic, uncertainty, multi-agent that are not rational, that you can be humble. But there is essentially the dilemma today in the world is a moral dilemma. Because globalization in the last 20 years created such inequality. Few people took so much, and at the same time, essentially didn't bring what we wanted to have. What I had, what people my age, when they grew up in the first part, when capitalism was under check, when the state put certain regulation, when there is certain values that you cannot behave in certain way, when communism failed, capitalism went astray. And globalization, in a state, you can have regulation. Nobody knows how to work in a global way. And therefore, we're in the worst crisis in history. Part of the thing that I'm calling all my friends now, if it's Stiglitz, Jean-Paul Fetoussi, all my friends that we work together in years in the world, that we have been liberal Democrats, social Democrats, you know, we believe in strong government and in a private market, because John Maynard Keynes, when he instituted, after Second World War, the three organizations, the WTO, the World Bank, the IMF, the idea was, yes, we want free trade, yes, we want to move forward, but we have to have boundaries. And it worked during the period that there was a strong state that is a complement and not a substitute, like my friend Mr. Netanyahu said. It's a complement to a good market. Because when you have a weak government and the market goes astray, the outcome is the abuse of financial markets that we see today, the abuse, essentially, of inequality, and therefore the past that, for me, that I'll decided to devote a lot of my time now, we have to change the dialogue. Also about economic, about justice, because we sell in the immediate media that all you have to do is to send a soundbite, and you are a great guy. Because today, in the 21st century, we have one thing, the opportunity that with all this internet, we can create powerful groups that want change, that are crying in Tel Aviv, in other places, in Wall Street. But at the same time, it's also the death of depths. There is a need for, in academia, for seriousness, because many academicians are just serving, if corporation or government, they forgot that part of to be in academia is to search for truth and to serve humanity. So when you walk, what you do, I am not a preacher, I'm only son of a carpenter, but not this carpenter. And therefore, I just wish you that when you do your deliberation, because everybody tried to be successful, and life is incentives. But today, the private incentives are totally destructive. I grew up that the motto of my life was the great Rabbi Hillel, that for me, it's also the proper way for economic discipline. אם אין אני לי מי לי, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו ומתי. If I am not for myself, who is for me? Yes, individual responsibility, private markets, yes, to move forward, but if I'm only for myself, who am I? If there's no family, if there's no state, if there is no planet, if it's only me and my greed, few celebrities, multi-billionaires that when you get close to them, you see that there's not much to see except this adulation of the masses. If we don't change that to I and thou, the way the great philosopher, Jewish philosopher Martin Buber say, and understand, to go back to the balance, we are in danger that globalization can destroy liberal democracy. And in that regard, the responsibility of intellectuals now is more than ever been in history, because we're in a major crisis. I stopped already. The abuse of economics, there are two professions that have the highest moral hazards, economics and law. Because so many people in economics and law make so much money by going around in the big party. But in academia, there should be also a group of people that are not bought by money, not by fame, and try to see what is right for human being. And I hope in your small work, I gave you in this Holy Land one word that I'll try to do in Israel, and believe me, it's a long way to Tipperary. Thank you very much.